lease, buy, or work from home. We are going to be having a conversation with two representatives from Cushman and Wakefield, Ryan Law and Nate Edwards. Gentlemen, if you can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Nate, you can go ahead first.
Great. Hey, everybody. Nate Edwards here. I'm the Senior Director for Research for the Washington, D.C. Metro region with Cushman and Wakefield. Been with Cushman now about 7 years and focus on all aspects of the commercial real estate market in Washington, D.C., including the economy, office metrics, and what's going on during COVID.
Nice.
Great. And my name's Ryan Waugh, and I'm a part of the tenant advisory group here at Cushman. I sit in our Northern Virginia Tyson's office, but we have a global platform, so do work all around the world. But our focus with my team is here in the DC region as well. So I advise tenants on going into office space.
All right. Well, so gentlemen, and feel free to answer this question in whichever order you prefer, but there's been a lot of things happening as of late and over the past few months with COVID, and now with us seeming to have the election settled, or for the most part, we think we know what's going to happen. Looking forward, what are the immediate impacts that you think either of those will have on the commercial real estate market for small businesses in the region?
Nate, do you want to chime in on some numbers, and then I can talk more theoretically?
Yeah,
we don't see you on camera, so if you want to share your camera, that would be awesome.
Okay, we'll do. One of the things we've experienced in the past 4 years, and what's subject to change in the next 4 years, given a switch in administrations. One thing we focus on is federal spending. Federal spending drives a lot of activity in DC. It accounts for about 30% of the GDP in the region, so it's a big impact. And with the Trump administration, what we had seen was a big focus on defense. Defense spending increased by about 20% over the 4 years. And so that was a big driver of demand in Nova, particularly among federal users and government contractors that focus on defense in Northern Virginia and getting those federal contracts. So it remains to be seen, but if I had to guess, that direction of spending probably shifts a little bit, likely less of a focus on defense and more of a focus on what we call the life sciences. So we have the death sciences versus the life sciences. And typical to Democratic administrations is more of a focus on health and human services. That obviously has been a focus up to this date with COVID. And then other priorities have included in Democratic administrations past, both HHS, more funding for the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, HUD, and some of the more social-oriented programs that likely have a bigger impact in suburban Maryland. But broadly speaking, federal spending does percolate around the region, and we'd expect that to continue with the Biden administration.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Now, thinking about the DC area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, the DMV region, is there quite a bit of space to own or rent? Has there been a lot of tenants moving out, tenants moving in? What are you seeing, and what are you advising small businesses to consider?
I'll tee it up for Ryan here, maybe. When we look nationally, there's a couple markets that tend to be net recipients of larger corporate moves, and Northern Virginia would be one of those. We did an analysis for one of our clients and determined that on average, about 17% of the office using job growth in Northern Virginia is from new recipients to the market, new companies moving in. And also when we see tenants moving within the region, Northern Virginia tends to outperform because of the comparatively pro-business climate, lower corporate tax rates, and that sort of thing. So we have seen that, and the latest big coup was the Amazon HQ2, which is expected to lead to startup business, smaller startups, and those grads coming out of the new Virginia Tech campus down there. So that should be a new incubator for smaller businesses. Back to you, Ryan.
Yeah, and I'll just piggybacking on what Nate said there. What we're seeing with the majority of our clients, Joey, is a lot of folks, you hear about this max exodus out of, San Francisco, New York to the suburbs. And we haven't quite seen that yet here. What we are seeing, though, is leasing velocities remain strong in Northern Virginia, especially along the Dulles, the toll road, Boston properties with Volkswagen. They're doing a lot of deals out in Reston Town Center right now, and I would say that if you can afford to go back to the office, right, if your culture relies on that, which so many of our clients it does, what we're seeing now, landlords are offering larger concession packages, meaning, more free rent, abatement, things like that, larger tenant improvement dollars to build out nicer space. We haven't seen a lot of rate fluctuation on the base rent, but we have seen concession packages go up significantly. So I would say right now, if you are a tenant in the market and you're willing and able to go either lease new space, restructure your current environment, it's a really good time to reconsider everything right now, because landlords are willing to give you things that, 6-7 months ago were out of the picture. So I would add that on to Nate's comments there.
Yeah, well, I think that's important to note, because when it comes to small businesses, every dollar matters, and you want to make sure that you're taking steps in the right direction. So to be able to, if you're in a current lease, go back and have conversations and see what maybe concessions are available for you at this time, if you haven't already done so. And then if you're maybe just been awarded a contract, or if you're looking to step up and grow the offices, there couldn't be a better time, I guess, to go in because of the sort of concessions that are being made in this area. Now, Nate, would you say that the concessions that you're seeing, or the trends that you're seeing in this area, are they translating in other markets as well, or is it more focused to this particular region?
Yes, great question. I would say broadly in the COVID pandemic, concessions are going to be up across the board. But even going into the pandemic, concession packages as a percentage of total deal volume has been among the highest in the country, and it's only increased 15 to 25% in the COVID pandemic. So we're at the kind of at the tip of the spear, so to speak, as it relates to concessions. And moving forward, we're expecting the shift in that to happen in the near term by 2022. So there's a couple additional years to kind of take advantage of the environment we're in before we expect things to shift back into more landlord favorable conditions.
Yeah, well, what sort of leasing arrangements, as far as number of years on leases, are you seeing deals happening now? Are people going into shorter leases because they aren't sure which direction the market's going, or are they committing towards more longer leases to take advantage of the opportunities?
Yeah, we've definitely seen an uptick in short-term renewals. That would be a reflection of uncertainty in the market. So, some user groups very much thinking that maybe now's the time to not make any large long-term decisions, but maybe lock something in place for the near term until the realities of the vaccine and some other issues maybe come about to help facilitate more long-term decisions. But it is a mixed bag. We're seeing a mix of both. If you really want to take advantage of the concessions in the market, the landlord is going to require a bit of term to reach the full market potential of that.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, Joey, too, I would say that we are seeing a surge of sublease activity in our market too. So just to kind of explain to the viewers what that means, Nate and I are talking about prime direct deal to the landlord right now. We're seeing a lot of large enterprise firms. Let's say they leased 100,000 square feet 5 years ago. Now, let's say they only need 75. So the balance of that 25,000 square feet, they're trying to recover on that investment. So what they'll do is they'll go put that on the market, and someone can undercut and come in and be a sub tenant, and they'll be the sub landlord. So at a very reduced rate, typically 50, 60 cents in the dollar, what you typically pay. So right now, we're seeing a lot of that, and it's a great opportunity for tenants to step in. If your base business is so uncertain for the next, say, 5-10 years, it's a great opportunity to save money and get in a flexible short-term solution where a lot of those fixed costs are already there. So the sub landlord has already incurred those expenses. So a new sub tenant doesn't have to do that. So it's a great opportunity for a lot of firms right now. But I would say, piggybacking on Nate's point, if you have certainty about your base business model and you know that you can survive 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10 years out, as Nate said, it's a very opportune time to take advantage of these concessions. That we're not going to see, when a vaccine comes back, and there are landlords who are bullish right now, and certain landlords don't want to play this game, but the majority of the landlords, especially in our market here, are willing to invest in that long-term relationship and acknowledge that with uncertainty, there needs to be a little more give and take. So I would say if you are in a position, you being a firm and can afford to make a long-term commitment, this is a great time to get out.
All right. Well, so taking that note, what are some of the better locations for small businesses, and not just small businesses, but even satellite offices? What locations are better to make a move now, and which ones aren't doing so well?
Yeah, I would just say it's kind of in the view of the beholder. Quote unquote, bad markets from an ownership perspective are actually probably where the occupier groups are going to get the best deals, and those are predominantly markets that don't have the retail amenities, mass transit proximity that say something like a Reston Town Center type concept, which has a great mixed use feel, walkable, plenty of multifamily office and retail entertainment options. Those markets are going to be pricier and a little tighter at this point than those non-metro served, non-amenitized submarkets. So good deals to be had, kind of if you're willing to maybe locate a little bit off the beaten path as it relates to mass transit and retail amenities.
So Nate, what you're saying is even within a regional market, some locations are going to be better than others based on access to public transit and getting in and out.
Yes, correct. And that would be reflected in more landlord flexibility as it relates to term, lower cost, and more opportunity in several locations within that submarket.
All right.
Yeah, and I'd say piggybacking on that too, Joey. Obviously, if we want to talk about base rent numbers and dollars, real dollars that firms can save, obviously going to lease space in Roslyn or in the CBD downtown, you're going to be paying $50 to $70 a square foot. Whereas you can do deals right now, kind of on the west side of Herndon per se, where there's not a metro yet, for high 20s, low 30s. So we're talking about a very significant delta, in 20 miles that a lot of firms can take advantage of. But like Nate said, I mean, if say you're a government contractor and you need to be, around all the big players in Roslyn, a lot of times you can justify that $65 rent number, because it's invaluable to your base business model. But for firms who either, have a half work remote policy or can afford to not, be close to a metro, I would say the further west, the closer to the airport, there's a lot of great deals to be had right now, especially with landlords who are not as bullish in the market.
All right. Well, let's turn our topic and focus to an area that I love talking about, and that's return to work.
Yeah.
And, this is the employee-focused part of the conversation. So what are you seeing as far as best practices when it comes to safety, PPE, signage, total occupancy? What are some of the trends that you're seeing some of your tenants doing?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit of that. To Jenny and I had a great conversation last couple of weeks about this. Something I can just reflect on our office here in Tyson's Corner. I give all the credit in the world to Sally Wills, Roberta List, Peter Croce, our leadership team, for kind of arranging a situation where we were not ever forced to go back, right? It was always a voluntary, operation. So if you were willing and able and you're healthy to come back, we have this thing when you get in the office and you open up your laptop on our Wi-Fi network, there's a kind of a PPE, it's a checklist item. You have to, if you have fever, right, there's different things you have to certify and click, so that obviously not only does it gather data points for us to reflect on, but B, if you're not well and there's a red flag, we can track that and make sure we're keeping everybody safe. There's directional signage on the floor, on the windows. We've assigned senior partners to junior partners for mentorship, advice to help survive kind of these times, things like that. There are, and I'll let Nate piggyback, but there are 1,000 things we've been doing and providing, there's something Cushman came up with called the Recovery Readiness Guide, and I'm happy to send you, Joey, so you can forward all the attendees on this call. really dives in very granular on specific, measurements of cubicles, how we're going to reconstruct offices. I've even seen, I was on a tour last week. There was a firm in Roslyn who had an artificial intelligence powered thermometer. So when you get off the elevator cabs, literally the entrance door to the office suite will not open unless your temperature is under 98. So pretty cool things like that we never thought we'd see before. There are multiple firms putting, self sanitizing buttons on elevators, doors. We've seen landlords and tenants alike go to great lengths to keep their employees safe, especially here at Cushman. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a big part of comfortability moving back into the office is going to be just the sanitization and protection that's in place, in addition to the vaccine that sounds like may be rolled out towards the end of this year or 2021. So that's a good part of it. The other part, though, when it comes to something we've all been experiencing, is employee engagement.
yeah.
It's been tough because so many things are going on personally, at work, with health, et cetera, et cetera. It's been a tough time. But if you're looking to return back to office, what are some of the things that you think employers can do to make that transition a little bit better and get people more engaged and comfortable and safe to be at their best?
Yeah, I would just say, and Ryan alluded to it, but it's the flexibility. I think a lot of employers are eager to get the employees back to the office, but it really falls back on the individual. So that flexibility from the employer standpoint as to what people are comfortable with at this stage in the pandemic, I think is key. And then those policies in place in the workplace, circulator routes, making sure there's bathroom policies that don't allow for cross contamination. The kitchen where a lot of people are touching similar items, that's huge. And having those sanitary stations next door where you can wipe down stuff after everyone uses, I think is key. And giving the employee kind of the confidence that, their employer's taking this seriously and that they feel safe and comfortable in the workspace.
Yeah. And Joey, it's something I'm sure a lot of listeners are asking in their head right now. And I know you reflect on this a lot, which is great, is company culture and how you can establish, kind of a winning at work mindset through leadership. And, our thought leaders, I wanted to share a couple data points. Our thought leaders at our workplace strategy group at Cushman put together a survey, that over, I think it was 1.7 million data points, 40,000, applicants that did this survey. And what we saw, 70% of Gen Z workers, noted a true struggle with working from home. And I thought going into this that it was going to be the folks, 55, 60-year-olds and above who were going to struggle the most, who had been used to being in the office for 30, 40 years. But what we're seeing actually is the reverse. Those folks are actually doing better at home. And we're seeing that, my generation really, the Gen Z, the millennial groups really struggle. And I think one of the things that we advise tenants on in corporate leadership councils and boards is recruitment and retention, and how we can shape an office and your real estate footprint to, be an incubator for a successful business. And one of those things is recruitment and retention. And right now, the lack of mentorship, the lack of guidance, those one-on-one breakout meetings are so invaluable, and you can't put a price tag on those things. So I would say that as long as you can maintain a safe environment, safe meaning, your employees genuinely feel like they're able and ready to come back to work. I think company culture, we're seeing a big surge in that right now because firms are struggling with profitability, because I'm a big believer in firms are successful because of their people, not so much of their product. And I think that the more people are comfortable and willing to work with one another, the more successful a lot of these businesses have been over the years. So, I think if you're able to go back to the office in a position where you're safe and you're willing to, we're seeing a big drop off in that kind of recruitment and retention area as well. So,
Yeah. We'll touch back on the employee side of it, the employee engagement side, but I think, when I think about safety in the office, I go back to the first time that I went to a Chick-fil-A in the midst of a pandemic, and you go through the drive-through and you see these stations set up for employee health. So you've got like gloves, you've got hand sanitizer, you even have, I think there was like a portable hand washing station.
Yeah.
And that made me feel good as a customer going there because it showed me the lengths that the organization was willing to go to keep their
Yeah.
employees safe. And if they're willing to go those lengths to keep their employees safe, that's going to build my confidence in shopping there. And so I think one of the things to think about for employers that are watching this, for small business owners that are watching this, as you're looking to return to work, if you do have those client interactions in office, not only will you build confidence with your team, but you'll also build confidence with your customers as well, whether that's, if you're a law firm or CPA firm or
Yeah.
anyone that does transactions in office. Just the presence of your safety measures can go a long way in building trust with the person that's walking in the doors to transact business with you. I don't know if you all are feeling that way as well, if you've seen that happen, but those are just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. My family and I are at Chick-fil-A a lot, and to Ryan's point, the product is one thing, but the experience with the employees there is something that company in particular does really well, and I think something we all could probably learn from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and to give Cushman some credit, obviously I'm biased. We have an incredible shop here, but Sally and our operations team and Bay Dobbins have done an incredible job with what you said, Joey. I don't think I can walk 5 feet in this office without seeing a bottle of hand sanitizer or new masks or things like that. We were all given. Shout out to Tamara Smith, our office manager. She gave us each a PPE bag with 20 masks and hand sanitizer and microfiber cloths, and they went above and beyond to make sure we were okay to be back here. So piggybacking on Chick-fil-A, Cushman's done a really, really good job at making sure we're safe. So, and to that point too, Joey, a lot of firms that don't know this, our office is cleaned twice a day, by a professional company called Redcoats. And, these are the little line items that can help your employees. I think if leaders within firms can ensure their employees that, hey, this is being cleaned in the morning and in the evening, just that psychological assurance is sometimes enough for employees to come back. So,
yeah. Are there any unique things that you're seeing in the marketplace that are going to be some of the long-term changes to the way that we work?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it remains to be seen. An interesting kind of analogy to the time we're in now is probably the post 9/11 world, where there was a big change in the way not only people were using office space, but how buildings were being built. Setbacks and force protection, anti-terrorism standards, some of which are still around. But I think the focus, on some of these, progressive collapse column systems and stuff have maybe softened a little bit for the majority of users. It's probably likely more in place for a lot of federal users and contractors. But I think it remains to be seen how long the COVID effects will be around. And I think the vaccine will have a lot to do with that. So it's a big question mark to me, but it will be interesting to see how many of these new policies remain and for how long they will remain.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, Nate, too, I think, Joey, one thing to note for tenants, we saw a massive we called it the landlord's arms race before COVID of amenity packages. Landlords were taking 40, 50, 60-year-old buildings and completely renovating them and shaping that renovation around fitness centers, tenant lounges, ways to make like a WeWork model to make your employees come in here and feel like, well, I'm not just going to a 10 by 10 office. I can go to my office in the morning, have coffee, I can meet other tenants, and then I can go work out at 5 o'clock. A lot of these public gathering places have been shut down, especially in our building, our learner building here in Tysons, nothing's open. So I'm really anxious, as a tenant advisor, and I'm sure Nate and we all are, we're anxious to see all these dollars that were spent by landlords on creating these really shared tenant spaces now. Are they going to be a thing of the past? Are they going to be here in 5 years? Is the vaccine going to be enough to make people want to come back and gather? Before, we saw 80, 100 person conference rooms that were shared. I'm seeing signs that, allow 5 to 10 people in there now. So is this, was that $1 million line item budget for a 100-person conference room a sunk cost? Who knows? Are they ever going to regain that investment? I don't know. So a lot of these things are going to be question marks for tenants. It's hard because in a full service office lease too, Joey, when in a building like ours, when these amenities are built, the core factor goes up, as Nate was talking about. And when that core factor goes up, obviously there's larger line items and operating expenses and taxes, which gets pushed through to the tenants. So tenants actually end up paying more because of these amenities that are delivered. So I'm anxious to see what landlords will do and how they'll accommodate tenants moving forward if we can't use these amenities.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note too, with renovating based on employee trends, renovating on projections of how you're going to utilize the office, what are you seeing from a government standpoint as far as rules and regulations that may kind of force us to comply with some of the new changes and recommendations? Are you seeing stricter stricter limitations on how many people can congregate? Are you seeing stricter fire codes? Are you seeing stricter policies around that area? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
Ryan, go ahead and I'll
Yeah.
follow you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Joey, I would say downtown DC, obviously, if you were to go downtown, let's say, this time in last year, I probably would have gotten hit by 40 people on my way to our office on L Street on the sidewalk. And it was it was a happening place. It was a buzzing environment. Everybody was out and about. Now, it's just amazing to me to see how different Maryland, DC, and Virginia are based on, you talk about government policy. I can walk from the metro to our office on L Street without seeing anybody now. So the government restrictions are much stronger in DC, obviously due to the density of people and the population, which makes perfect sense. And then you come out to Virginia and you can go to a building in Herndon and half the building's already occupied and people are back to work. So, I would say that it really depends, and Nate can speak to this, more on the research side, but I would say, at 30,000 feet, it really depends on, who's your mayor, who's your governor, what implications in your state are they having. You can go down to Mississippi and Alabama right now, and, oftentimes you don't even need to wear a mask. So it's amazing to me to see how different, areas of the world, especially the United States, are handling this. So it really depends on where you sit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Downtown too, when you are walking around, everyone, even outside, is in a mask. There's it takes a village to make it happen, especially, as we are seeing cases start to rise again. And it'll be interesting to see also, and I think we're kind of a little too early to tell at this point, but are people going to start to and I know of maybe one or two companies that are exploring this, maybe downsize that downtown core location and have satellite offices closer to where their employees live to maybe help with some of that, both the comfortability factor and safety issues and concern for the employee, as well as maybe a way that they can get more productivity based on the policies that are happening in different jurisdictions.
All right. Sounds good. We'll land the plane soon, but going into this new year, as business owners take a look at maybe renegotiating their lease or reorganizing their office to make it more safe, effective, and efficient, why would a partnership with a commercial real estate firm be the best step to sign up to sign deals that are advantageous and to maybe get some insight into office renovation?
Yeah, I can kick this one off. I think, Joey, it's critically important, because we are students of the marketplace. And I think first and foremost, I know right now with the market, typically the real estate market, especially in the commercial, and it's such a lagging indicator of the stock market and other global financial markets. So to understand, what a good deal is, what a bad deal is, a lot of times tenants, if you're not studying this every day, this is what we live and breathe. I kind of like to make an example for listeners. If I had a lump sum of money and went up to New York, it'd probably be wise to go see a stockbroker or investment, an analyst, something to get an assurance that I know where my money is going has an opportunity to grow. It's the same for us. if you just enter into a lease or a negotiation with a landlord on your own without an advisor, I think oftentimes, you won't know if that deal's good for your business. You won't know if there's a clause in that lease, that an attorney might have missed that we'll catch. There are 1,000, things to say here, but I think most importantly, you need to have somebody fighting on your behalf, because a tenant and a landlord, their strategies are never going to perfectly align, right? Because their interests are different. And I think if you have somebody fighting for your interests and making sure that you're taken care of in the best, most professional manner to get a fair and equitable deal in the marketplace, that speaks volumes about these service providers like Cushman. So I'll let Nate piggyback on that, but I think just being students of the marketplace is enough reason to partner with us. So
right, and knowing what the market is of the utmost important. That's important. So that's where research and brokerage are working hand in hand on making sure that our clients are getting the best deal out there. What's the market? What should you expect to pay in the deal that's in front of you? What should the concessions be based on similar transactions in that submarket? We have all that data, so we can, we're looking at that on a daily basis. And Ryan, maybe it would be interesting for the audience, maybe particularly those that are either very new to taking out a corporate lease or someone who's thinking about doing that in the future, how a typical fee structure is set up, and it might allay some concerns about engaging with a broker with that knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think that's a really good segue here. So, how we're paid and how I'm paid and my team is, landlords base their base rate, on fixed costs in the market that they know they're going to have to incur, right? There's not two sets of rates. If you show up without a broker, you're going to pay 32. And if you show up with a broker, you're going to pay 37. There's landlords will establish their rates, and all of those costs, brokerage commissions, things like that are baked into those rates and the marketplace. So, tenants do not pay us a direct fee. We are actually paid a fee by the landlord on behalf of representing the tenant going into their building. It'd be similar to, it's a landlord, acknowledging that we're going to reach a fair and equitable deal. And, the landlord's going to acknowledge that tenant probably wouldn't be in my building if it wasn't for the broker who is, that's my role. So, tenants don't come out of pocket out of their budget to pay us for our transaction fees. We are paid a commission by the landlord after the transaction's completed. And our fees are baked into that market rate. And to Nate's point, there's not a day that goes by that I don't communicate with Nate, that my team doesn't communicate with research, because without an advisor and a broker, I say that I always tell, our clients, if we can't save you more than my fee is worth, I'll give you back whatever that delta is. Typically the savings that our clients, realize in real dollars is far greater than my commission fee from that's paid by the landlord. So it just gives our clients a level of comfortability knowing that we're always fighting on their behalf, and that if it's not a good deal, we'll go somewhere else. So I don't base my building selection and my advisory practice at all on our fees. We understand that you will be taken care of if you take care of your clients, and that's our driving message every day.
Awesome. Ryan, Nate, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm sure we've helped a lot of businesses out there in the region, but also those who are not in the region but peeking into the conversation on social media and getting some advice for their organization.
Yeah, and one final note, we are obviously a global platform, Joey. So anybody listening to this call, it doesn't matter if you're in Los Angeles, Shanghai, or New York, DC. We have an army of teammates ready to help and fight for your interests. So thank you, Joey, and we really appreciate you having us on. It's been a great 45 minutes with you.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.